The basic structure of American abortion law under Roe and under Casey was abortion had to be legal until the point called fetal viability. And viability is the point in pregnancy where a baby can survive outside the womb. After viability, states could ban abortion, but they have to have a health exception, an exception for pregnancies where mom's health is indicated. Now, that health exception has been interpreted really, really broadly, but a number of states do have on the books laws saying no abortions after fetal viability. Okay, that is on the books. California is one of those states that says no abortions after fetal viability except in situations that threaten maternal health. And that was built into the California Health and Safety Code, and that was the law surrounding abortion in California. Proposition 1, though, just inserted into the California Constitution, and again, the California not again, this is the first time I'm saying it in the show. This is a bad verbal tick I have, saying again for something I haven't repeated before. The California Constitution is the fundamental law of the state of California, kind of like how the U.S. Constitution is the fundamental law for federal law. The California Constitution is the fundamental law for all the rest of California law. If the California Constitution says one thing and a law in just a general law in the California Health and Safety Code says another thing, the California Constitution is what's going to hold. They inserted into the California Constitution just a generic right to that, affirming that women that persons have a right to an abortion, not a abortion prior to fetal viability and after fetal viability only in the case of maternal health being threatened. No, a blank, broadly written right to an abortion that the state may not do anything to interfere with a woman's right to have an abortion without any of the limiting language that exists in California, in the California Health and Safety Code. When this issue was raised by us pro-lifers of saying, whoa, are you guys legalizing third trimester abortion? Because it sure looks like you are. If you had just copy and pasted what was in the California Health and Safety Code, I mean, that would be bad enough, but at least that's the same thing. But you didn't copy and paste. You wrote something else. And the reactions from the pro-abortion side were various. The politicians who, actually, Jonathan, I think you might have been at one of those committee hearings. Like the first time the question was raised, and I think James Gallagher raised it in the debate over Prop 1 when it was first introduced into the state legislature, and after it got 2/3 of the vote in the state legislature, it qualified for the ballot.
It might have been Kevin Kiley, actually, but yeah, I think so.
Actually, you're right. I think it was Kevin Kiley. Kevin Kiley asked, "Is this legalizing third trimester abortion?" And none of the Democrats could answer. They didn't answer it.
Yep.
After that, Tony Atkins, the majority leader in the California State Senate, went around saying, "Oh, no, it's not changing anything." But
that was first. I also have to point out, it wasn't just that they went humana. Mm-hmm. When they were asked about this, and I think it was at the time it was the Speaker of the House,
the Assembly,
Anthony Rendon.
Yeah,
they said, I'd like to know, does it do this? And there was a dead silence. Where they were conferring and trying to say, and they wouldn't say anything. Mm-hmm. And then towards the very end of this, almost a minute of dead air where they're just conferring, trying to figure out what they're going to say. They said,
you guys wrote it.
I mean, I will address that in my closing statement. So
and then they didn't address it.
Correct.
Yeah. So at first they had no answer. Then in front of the cameras, you had Tony Atkins, the Senate majority leader for the Democrats in the California State Senate. She comes out and says, "Oh, no, it's not changing anything." Well, then NPR in San Francisco, KQED, did a story about the issue in which they interviewed Dr. Pratima Gupta, who is an OBGYN from San Diego, who was involved in the drafting of Proposition 1. And she said, oh, yeah, we deliberately left out anything restricting anything about fetal viability or restricting the time frame or anything like that because, every pregnancy is a spectrum and doctors need to have leeway and, blah, 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 blah. And she goes on and on about how and why they deliberately left it out. So you've got very mixed messages. Then we hear news that, the DuPont Clinic's coming to open, which bills itself in D.C. as offering all-trimester abortion. Oh, they're opening up in L.A., and they're getting a state grant. So now we got this story from the L.A. Times, written by Jenny Jarvie, August 14th. After the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last summer, Beverly Hills officials protested by lighting up the plaza in front of City Hall in a glow of pink. Council members had already voted 5-0 for a resolution backing abortion rights. Blah, 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 blah. But a little more than a year later, the affluent city has become a battleground over reproductive rights. An abortion provider that planned to open a clinic in Beverly Hills offering procedures beyond 24 weeks of pregnancy is alleging that the city colluded and conspired with anti-abortion activists to force out the clinic. It gave formal notice Monday of damage claims against local officials. The dispute illustrates that even in the bluest parts of California, abortion rights face serious challenges, especially when it comes to the most controversial procedures. I love the framing of this.
The most
abortion rights face serious challenges. No one has a right to a medically unnecessary third trimester abortion. Well, unless Prop 1 means what we said it was meaning, that you lied about what it meant. Anyway, clinics that perform abortions later in pregnancy, a service that abortion advocates say is sorely needed in California. We've blown past the argument. We're just saying, well, abortion advocates say we really need this. We're way past. Note that we don't say that abortion foes say is gruesome, barbaric, and involves the destruction of a viable human life. Clinics that perform abortions later in pregnancy find themselves under extreme scrutiny. Yeah, no kidding. Although 69% of Americans say abortion should be legal in the first 3 months of pregnancy, only 22% of respondents in a recent poll said third trimester abortions should be legal. I bet it's smaller even than 22%. Anyway, DuPont Clinic, a Washington, D.C.-based provider, said it has spent millions of dollars updating the medical facility on Wilshire Boulevard with the goal of expanding to the West Coast. Its letter to the city, a required precursor in California to a lawsuit, alleges that 4 city officials, including Mayor Julian Gold, acted to withhold permits to the facility after anti-abortion protests. It claims the city, where voters in 2020 chose Joe Biden by 17 percentage points over Donald Trump, pressured the landlord to back out of the lease, held secret meetings with members of the group Survivors of the Abortion Holocaust, and promised them it would stop DuPont from opening. The clinic alleges city officials bowed to the political pressure of the anti-abortion community instead of protecting the right to abortion enshrined in the California Constitution.
Oh, really?
Oh,
I thought that was.
But I thought the California Constitution was only protecting the same thing that the California Health and Safety Code said. DuPont is also targeting the landlord, Douglas Emmett Incorporated, in a separate lawsuit filed Monday in Los Angeles County Superior Court. It's disappointing to try to return to California after so much has been in the news about how the state is ready to help people access abortion, only to discover that the reality is different, Dr. Matthew Reeves, DuPont's founder, told the LA Times. Beverly Hills officials denied DuPont's allegations and said rescinding the lease was the landlord's decision. The assertion that the city came to an agreement with protesters to force the clinic out is false, Deputy City Manager Keith Sterling told the Times on Monday. The permits were issued after our attorneys confirmed the services to be offered were in compliance with state law. We're in compliance with state law. What exact services? Is this the all-trimester abortion? Is that in compliance with state law?
Apparently, under Prop 1.
We were anticipating the clinic would open in Beverly Hills later this year. California's statute restricts abortion after a fetus is viable at about 24 to 26 weeks of pregnancy. Yeah, a little earlier than that. Unless the patient's life or health is in danger. That makes California abortion law more complicated than in the nation's capital in 6 states, Colorado, Minnesota, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, and Vermont, with no gestational limits on when abortion is legal. But California's fetal viability limit is in question, however, after voters in November overwhelmingly approved Proposition 1, adding a right to abortion to the state constitution that did not mention the word viability. legal experts say there is little consensus on whether California's viability standard still holds. And there we go. We've shifted from, oh, no, you pro-lifers are lunatics. What the heck are you guys talking? This isn't about third trimester abortions. This is just about codifying. Now we've got, legal experts are in disagreement here. Yeah. It's exactly what we said. The exact thing we said would happen is happening.
It hurts to say I told you so.
Yeah,
but
we flippin' did. The whole debate over Prop 1, the only thing that could have changed in California law was making third trimester abortion easier to obtain. That's all that was going to change.
Government funding.
And apparently that's what's going to happen. Well, and I do think there are other things that could happen as a result of Prop 1, but all right. Given that we were right on that, when we return, we're going to talk about some other stuff that I'm wondering if we were right about also, that I at least, and I think Jonathan was largely agreeing with me. We'll talk about it next on Right to Life Radio. Our production is always of Right to Life Central California, rtlcc.org. We're back with Right to Life Radio. This is the unfortunate See I Told You So episode. After months of us talking about Prop 1 and saying how it was going to legalize third trimester abortions, lo and behold, what do we see? Evidence that, in fact, that's precisely what California did. You've got a abortion clinic trying to open up shop in Beverly Hills with advertising, hey, we're going to have third trimester abortions. You got an LA Times story. Oh, well, it's unclear if Prop 1 actually does. Maybe it actually did legalize third trimester abortions. Maybe it overrides the California Health and Safety Code, which, frankly, the more that I think about this, like everyone kept saying, well, Proposition 1 is probably just codifying what the Health and Safety Code said. That logically makes no sense, okay? So basically, what are you saying? That if we change the health proposition... All right, let me give Con Law 101 here. Every state has a state constitution. It's usually really hard to change, and it usually contains some of the foundational law for that state.
Unless you're California.
Well, all right, let's stick with it's very hard to change.
Yes. Should be hard to change. Basic
structures of law, most important individual rights that people have. That's the stuff that's in the Constitution. So you can't just change it the way you change a normal law. The normal law, a majority in the Assembly, a majority in the state Senate, and the governor signs it. No, that you can't change a state constitution with a normal law. The state constitution takes precedence over normal laws. If you have normal laws on the books that say X, and you pass a new amendment to the California state constitution that says not X, guess what the law is? It's not X. That's how constitutions work. They're more important than normal laws. Whether it's the federal constitution looking at federal law, whether it's the Arkansas Constitution looking at Arkansas laws, the California Constitution takes precedence over California laws. California statutes defined the right to abortion. The California statute said abortion's legal until fetal viability. After fetal viability, it's only legal if there's a threat to the mother's health. And so people were saying, with Prop 1 said the state shall not infringe on a woman's right to have an abortion. It didn't say an abortion prior to fetal viability. It didn't say an abortion prior to fetal viability unless there's a health, just to have an abortion. So what are the parameters of that right? Everyone kept saying, well, it's just what's defined in the Health and Safety Code. That's what's defining the parameters of the right. Well, what if the Health and Safety Code got changed to say no abortion, after 6 weeks of pregnancy? I mean, so you're saying that you can amend the Constitution by changing a simple statute? That makes no sense. That logically makes no sense. So it has to be, you can't use a California statute as your reference for what this law means, because you could amend that California statute tomorrow.
Yes.
And arguably, that's what happened with AB, the bill that changes all the stuff about coroners investigating for...
2223. AB
2223. One could argue that AB 2223 did change it.
Yep.
So, anyway, We argued the whole time with Prop 1, it's going to legalize third trimester abortion. There's more and more evidence coming out that that's precisely what it did. What were some of the other things, Jonathan? Since we're on a I told you so run here.
Yes.
There are some other things that we thought. Now, let's remember the language of Prop 1. The language of Prop 1 says that the state of California, it forbids the state of California from doing any action that interferes with a woman's right to have an abortion,
right,
or a person's right. Sorry,
for all the pregnant person,
for all the pregnant men out there.
That's right.
There's all kinds of things that could interfere with your right to have an abortion. There are California laws on the books that say you as a doctor, you have a right not to do abortions, or as a hospital, you have a right not to do abortions. It's in the California Health and Safety Code. There are conscience protections saying that willingness to do abortion cannot be made a prerequisite for admittance to medical school, a nursing program, or any other kind of medical training program. Does that limit the number of providers that abortion has? That number of providers who are willing to do abortions and thereby interfere with a woman's right to have an abortion?
Well, and this is the thing, John. I think that Prop 1 makes the I know we're going to get way too much into the weeds here, but when you talk about Supreme Court precedent of the whole idea of strict scrutiny and intermediate scrutiny and all these types of things, essentially, in my mind, using the phrase interferes with, it basically sets up this type of new test.
What's interference?
It's just waiting for the California Supreme Court.
It's like the old Planned Parenthood versus Casey. You can't put up an undue burden to someone's right. Well, what's an undue burden? It's just a burden that Justice Kennedy thinks is undue. That's all it meant for 30 years, pretty much.
Well, and the fact here is at least they said undue burden. In this case, they don't even say undue. They just said interference, period.
Yeah.
And that's where I really do wonder. I think it would be a lot harder to attack this closure or the denial of the right to open the DuPont Clinic. It would be a lot harder to attack it as violating the California Constitution if that phrase interferes with was not in the Constitution.
In the California Constitution.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, where do you stop? Where do you stop? I don't, this is the thing. I don't believe that the people who drafted Prop 1 were stupid. And this is, I'll end the segment like this. You have to believe one of two things about the authors of Prop 1. You have to believe that this ballot initiative that had millions and millions of dollars behind it, huge corporate entities, well-funded, funded by billionaires, gazillion-dollar lobbyists, businessmen in their business suits. Okay, since this is my little anti-capitalist thing, that these people, out of sloppiness, stupidity, and incompetence, drafted just a sloppy law. Just drafted a new amendment.
Sure.
A new amendment to the Constitution of the largest state in the country. And just, they were just haphazard. As if every word wasn't chosen by a razor-sharp lawyer or a razor-sharp member of the state legislature with legislative aides helping them, as if not every word was chosen with the utmost precision. And this is not a complicated thing where, often the state legislature is dumb and they do pass things that don't make sense because they don't actually have expertise. This is not a complicated thing. You think they didn't pick every word? You think they didn't understand they were introducing ambiguity into California law, maybe a deliberate bit of ambiguity that could be exploited by aggressive ACLU lawyers bringing lawsuits before the California Supreme Court? The ACLU was probably involved in the drafting of this.
Oh, yeah.
Almost certainly.
And Planned Parenthood was, NARAL was.
They all, To think that every word of this was not carefully selected. So I think that's what you have to believe. You have to believe that the authors of Prop 1 were a bunch of sloppy Mr. Magoo doofuses, or that they deliberately chose this. And I think that's what happened. I think they deliberately chose to write it in the broadest language possible to bring about the maximal political victories they could possibly achieve. All right. When we return, we will have more here on Right to Life Radio. Do not turn the dial. A production, as always, of Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. Get in touch with us. Hey, you want to volunteer with us at the Fresno Fair, at the Madera Fair? Go to rtlcc.org to learn more. We'll be right back after this. We're back with Right to Life Radio, and hey, if you want to learn more about stuff we are doing, go to righttolifeca.org, and you can find on our website our most recent newsletter for Right to Life of Central California. We've got a great piece about our new executive director at the Obrey Medical Clinics in Central California, Melissa Champion, who is doing a phenomenal job, and perhaps most importantly, allowed me to fire myself as being in charge of the Obrey Clinic, so that I didn't have to run 2 organizations at once and go crazy. So anyway, check it out. And if you want to volunteer with us at the big Fresno Fair or at the Madera Fair coming up in the next few months, go to righttolifeca.org. Thank you all so much for supporting what we do. All right, Jonathan.
All right.
We might stray into we're straying into the deep, darkest recesses of the internet in order to basically,
what could go wrong?
We're discussing various kinds of youth culture things that will be somewhat odd, but just stick with me. And I'm gonna tie this into
I'm listening.
It's a little bit of an intra-Catholic baseball discussion that I'm gonna have. I being Catholic, Jonathan being the token Protestant on the show. But we try to discuss these interreligious different kinds of, you know what? And actually, I'm going to try to tie this in with the Catholic world, and we'll have a different discussion later on in this segment for the evangelical world about how we are relating to members of our communities who violate what our communities believe by advancing abortion. So I'm going to do it with Joe Biden.
I'm looking forward to this.
And then you're going to do it with Dr. Francis Collins.
Oh,
all right. So let's start with Joe Biden. Okay.
All right.
Joe Biden has a campaign ad out, and it's being posted on like foxnews.com. I think the Biden campaign was timing the release of these campaign images and ads, like banner ads and stuff for websites. I think they were timing it for the day of the Republican debate, which was this past Wednesday. And there's this, many of you may have heard of the phrase, "Let's go Brandon." So this originated from a NASCAR event in which a driver was being interviewed by the one of the reporters.
Yes.
And in the background, the crowd was chanting expletive Joe Biden, the F word Joe Biden, F word Joe Biden. And the poor interviewer gal who's just trying to interview this race car driver was saying, yes, the crowd's chant. I guess the race car driver's name was Brandon something. And the poor anchor, who I think was just trying to do her job and not dwell on the various FCC fines that were happening around her, said, they're saying, let's go Brandon. That's what they're saying, rather than F Joe Biden.
F Joe Biden, yes.
Yeah. So the Biden campaign, so "let's go Brandon" became a phrase on the right, a joking phrase about disliking Joe Biden.
Kind of crude.
I thought it was a little clever about how the media, trying to say the media covers up for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought it was a little clever, but kind of crude. Well, the Biden people have tried to sort of take it back and have referred to Joe as Dark Brandon. And the idea that Joe Biden's doing so many cool, hardcore, in-your-face, getting Democrat priorities accomplished, and it's just, we're taking the Brandon name back. Okay. So they produce basically these images of Joe Biden with evil, glowing red eyes, and that is they're calling it Dark Brandon. So they released a series of campaign ads with these pictures on them. So it's like a blue silhouette outline of Joe Biden with the eyes glowing evil red. And this is, I don't know. Boy, explaining this out loud really makes you realize just how dumb the internet is, doesn't it, Jonathan?
Yeah.
All right. So he's producing these ads, and one of them, it's Biden. It's an image of Biden with his glowing red eyes, and the text on it says, "Get real, Jack. I'm bringing Roe back. And Get Real Jack was another kind of somewhat embarrassing incident Biden had where he yelled at a reporter and was like, "Hey, get real, Jack." Anyway, so
listen, fat.
It's trying to take back all these sort of embarrassing Biden things to make him seem cool. You know, your mileage may vary about how cool this is. So, get real, Jack. I'm bringing Roe back. And I stepped back as a Catholic, and Biden being a fellow Catholic. I step back and I kind of think about this. This man is purportedly a Catholic. He presents himself as Catholic. He goes to church. He receives Holy Communion. He trumpets his Catholic faith. And it's not even that he's saying, I don't think we should punish. I don't like abortion, but I don't think it's something that should be punished. He's promoting abortion as a genuine good. And I think that's a big shift, even among Democrats. I think there used to be at least a somewhat intellectually honest position that even Catholic Democrats took of, hey, we're in a pluralistic society. Not every vice needs to be punished by the state. So, if I can't make every decision personally for someone. If someone makes that decision, it's a difficult thing. I'm not going to be the one to tell them what they can and can't do for making this private decision. I disagree with that, but I can at least see it. And such a mindset would at least be consistent with something like, okay, well, we're not going to fund abortion. We're not going to say abortion's good. We're not going to furnish abortion. And Joe Biden used to be one of those kinds of Democrats, and he's not anymore. Now he flip-flopped his 40-year-long position on federal funding for abortion over the course of 1 week in 2019 when he realized it would be an issue for his reelection and just abandoned a principle he'd held for 40 years.
Makes you wonder how sincere that principle actually was.
Well, these are my principles, as Groucho Marx said. These are my principles, and if you don't like them, well, I have others. Completely abandoned that. To now at the point of promoting federal funding for abortion, paying for military members to fly out of state to go to places to get abortions, have the federal government pay for their travel and their lodging. All that he's done with allow abortion pills to be shipped through the mail, abortions at military bases, federal funding for foreign NGOs that do abortion. And now to get to this point where just telling jokes in a campaign ad about, I'm going to bring Roe v. Wade back. I'm going to bring back this policy that resulted in how many tens of millions of children dying. And I just think, how can...
It's also, John, I just want to point out something. It's frustrating because it is yet another example. He doesn't say, get ready, Jack. I'm bringing abortion back. Get ready, Jack.
I'm bringing Roe back.
Yeah, because even for all of the Democrats talk about, I want to... the public is with us on the idea of taxpayer-funded abortion, like what Tommy Tuberville is fighting. Mm-hmm. And
way to go, Tommy.
Unrestricted late-term abortion here at the clinics here in California. I mean, for all of that, they still have to abstract it away by using the phrase
we can't
abortion.
We can't call it what it is. We have to abstract it.
I'm bringing Roe back. Right. And people know that's like, this is kind of this code word for somehow women's health care / abortion in dire medical emergency circumstances.
Right. And that's not what it is.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So I continue to struggle with how any Catholic bishop, looking at the internal canon law of the Catholic Church, which says that people who are manifest unrepentant sinners shouldn't receive Holy Communion, not because we're judging them subjectively, but because we're judging their objective actions that are providing scandal to the broader community, and we cannot just give the idea that their public conduct is hunky-dory. We can't give Holy Communion. If Hugh Hefner decides, I'm going to be a Catholic, and shows up at a Catholic church and tries to... No, we're not going to give communion to Hugh Hefner. He needs to change some things first. Sort of analogously, Jonathan, we go to a controversy roiling in evangelical world.
Yes.
Over Francis Collins. Now, longtime listeners to this show know of my and Jonathan's severe disagreements with Dr. Francis Collins. And
we are in agreement.
We are in agreement.
No. Disagreement.
We disagree with him, with Francis Collins.
Right.
And we think that it was one of the first big mistakes of the Trump administration was not to fire him. And actually, we have shows from 2017 where you and I are saying Donald Trump needs to fire Francis Collins.
Yeah, and I really try, like John, normally I think you and I are both, I'm proud of how humble we are, generally.
As any good Christian should
That's
be.
right. But I mean, somewhat kidding aside, I don't feel like we toot our own horn very much on here. But you can go back.
We should toot our horn about that.
We
were
the tape.
right.
Yeah, you can check the tape on this.
Yeah,
because
and why were we right? So Dr. Francis Collins was the head of the National Institutes of Health.
The NIH.
He had been appointed to that position by Barack Obama. Why had he been appointed to that position by Barack Obama? Chiefly because Obama reversed all the George W. Bush era regulations, the George W. Bush regulations that prohibited federal funding for embryo-destructive stem cell research. Obama wanted to reverse that and brought in Francis Collins. And in 2009, all these interviews with Francis Collins saying, we need to do embryonic stem cell research. We need to do embryonic stem cell research. And Jonathan and I said, that's really bad. He shouldn't be doing that. Mm-hmm. That's the destruction of innocent human life. It's deeply, seriously, morally wrong, and he is promoting really bad things.
Right.
And when Donald Trump came into office, he had the opportunity to remove him. He didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan and I said that was wrong.
Yep.
Over the course of the Trump administration, we learned a lot more about Dr. Collins, that he supported fetal tissue, that his NIH continued to fund, and he continued to defend the funding of research using tissue derived from aborted fetuses, some of which was horrific, twisted, evil, barbaric misuse of the remains of murdered children, including such things as trying to graft the scalp of a murdered fetus onto the back of a rat. Looking at how
not just once. I mean, there
multiple
are,
times.
Yeah, there's multiple
these human rat chimera experiments.
Yeah.
Looking at how the organs of recently killed human beings, murdered fetuses, how bacteria would decay them. Basically, Christianity Today got into hot water because Tim Keller, who is a very long time, I mean, you could not related to Jonathan Keller, but Tim Keller was a long-time, very respected evangelical pastor.
I will say, John, I found out for the first time, I didn't know this, but...
Is he related to you?
No, he's not related to me. Okay. But he does have a son named Jonathan.
Oh, my gosh.
Which is very confusing because I actually literally had some people that messaged me. I think it was actually
all these Old Testament biblical names.
I know.
Evangelicals just love Old Testament biblical names.
Well,
anyway,
and I had no idea until I saw like someone had posted part of the eulogy, and there's like a quote in the eulogy
survived
from
by
his
son Jonathan.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my gosh.
So but Christianity Today published a tribute to Tim Keller, written by none other than Dr. Francis Collins. And Christianity Today is a fairly large mainstream evangelical publication. And it made a bunch of people say, why the heck are you publishing something written by this man who supports all kinds of LGBT stuff that is opposed to mainstream evangelical Christian teaching, supports abortion, who has been supportive of embryo-destructive stem cell research, who's been supportive of all these things. And I think there needs to be, within our various religious traditions, and most of our listeners are probably not everyone, but many of our listeners, I would imagine, are Christian or either evangelical Christians or Catholic or some other form of Protestant Christian. I think we need to have a real grappling with what it is we believe and how it is we deal with the issues of people within our traditions who violate those norms really flagrantly. And I don't think blithely ignoring them, which is seemingly the tack that people have taken, is the right thing to do.
Right.
When we return, we'll end on a more positive note with some good news from South Carolina and some other good stuff. This is Right to Life Radio on Power Talk. Right to Life Radio. Support us at Right to Life of Central California. Go to righttolifeca.org. Some good news to close out the show. I like to end on. That's probably not true that I like to end on a positive note. I'm usually a very negative person. Jonathan's my positive good angel.
Okay, Bert.
Ernie.
Right.
Ernie, Dr. Francis Collins is a butcher. All right, anyway. To close out the show, some very good news from the Palmetto State.
Yes.
That South Carolina had been trying and failing to pass restrictions on abortion that their state Supreme Court would uphold, leading Jonathan and I to rant and rave at how useless Republicans are, how they appoint state Supreme Court justices who are actually not very conservative, and blah, 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 blah. Well, thankfully, the South Carolina State Supreme Court just upheld in a 4-1 decision a law passed by the South Carolina legislature to ban abortions after fetal heartbeat can be detected. And this is another big victory for pro-lifers in yet another state. So it's coming into effect in South Carolina.
Yeah, 4-1.
Indiana's abortion limitation is coming into effect just this past week also. So, this is what we needed to get from overturning Roe. It allows every state to do stuff on their own without federal interference to limit abortion. We couldn't do that before Roe, and now it's happening. And there are thousands of children who are going to live who would not live as a result. So anyway, kudos to South Carolina. Go Gamecocks. All right. That'll do it for Right to Life Radio. We'll see you next time.